cockpit smelled like burning insulation and fear. Lieutenant Maya Rourke cinched the neuro helmet tighter against her skull, feeling the interface pads dig into her temples as the Locust's fusion engine thrummed beneath her feet. Through the ferroglass viewport, the pre-dawn darkness of Sheraton III stretched flat and hostile, broken only by distant artillery flashes that lit the horizon like summer lightning. Red line. This is Overwatch. Confirm package secure and ready for sprint. The voice in her headset belonged to Major Voss, calling from somewhere safe, somewhere with thick walls and overhead cover. Maya's hand went instinctively to the sealed cargo pouch, velcroed to her cooling vest. The data drive inside weighed maybe 50 grams. People were going to die for those 50 grams. Some already had. Package confirmed. Locust ready to sprint. She kept her voice steady, professional. No one needed to know her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. Copy. Red line. You have 17 minutes to reach extraction point Zulu before the dropship lifts. Artillery barrage is active across your route. Recommend you haul ass. Solid advice, Overwatch. Red line moving. She eased the throttle forward, and the 20-ton mech responded like a nervous thoroughbred. The Locust wasn't built for standing still. It wasn't built for armor or firepower. It was built for one thing: speed. 130 kilometers per hour of pure, desperate velocity. In the Battletech universe, they called it a scout mech. Maya called it a tin can with legs and a prayer. The mech's feet found their rhythm, servos whining as the stride lengthened. 60 kp, 80, 100. The cockpit began its familiar violent shudder, every weld and rivet protesting the abuse. Maya's teeth chattered despite her clenched jaw. Her vision blurred at the edges as the landscape transformed into streaks of gray and brown. 120 kf. The mantra came unbidden, burned into her brain. Through 6 months of running desperate missions across this miserable planet, speed is armor. Speed is armor. Speed is armor. At 130 kp, the Locust wasn't walking. It was barely running. It was flying, feet kissing the ground just long enough to launch into the next bounding stride. The gyro screamed to maintain balance. Every rock, every dip in the terrain translated directly into Maya's spine, her neck, her skull. The neuro helmet interface amplified every sensation, making her feel like she was running on her own legs, 20 meters tall and made of myomer muscle. She angled northeast, following the waypoint painted on her HUD. 12.3 kilometers to extraction. At this speed, maybe 6 minutes. 6 minutes might as well be 6 hours when the sky was falling. The first artillery shell hit 800 meters to her left. The explosion painted the darkness orange and white. A blooming flower of fire that threw debris 300 meters into the air. The shockwave hit a second later, slamming into the Locust's left side. Maya felt the mech stagger, gyro shrieking as it fought to keep 30 tons of sprinting metal upright. Her shoulder harness bit deep as she was thrown against the restraints. Contact! Taking artillery fire! She didn't know why she said it. Overwatch could see the explosions on their screens. Confirmed, Redline. Enemy fire control has you bracketed. Do not stop. Do not slow down. Do not slow down. Right. Because slowing down was dying. At 100 kf, she was a target. At 130, she was a ghost, a blur, something that might be somewhere else by the time the shells arrived. Might be another impact, closer this time. The ground erupted 600 meters ahead and to the right. Maya jinked left, trusting instinct over thought. The Locust responded instantly, the mech's foot placement shifting mid-stride. For a heartbeat, she was airborne, truly flying. And then the right foot came down hard on uneven ground, and the whole cockpit rang like a bell. Warning lights flickered across her console. Structural integrity nominal. Armor minimal, but intact. Engine temperature climbing. She was running the fusion plant hot. Hotter than the technical manual recommended. Because the manual was written by people who had never sprinted through an artillery barrage with the fate of a battalion in their cargo pouch. The data drive contained firing solutions, enemy positions, the exact coordinates of a Draconis Combine artillery battery that had been hammering her unit for 3 days. The recon lads had died getting that information. 3 mechs, good pilots, torn apart by Combine Jenners in a running firefight that had left Maya as the only survivor. Not because she was better, because she was faster. Because when the Jenners had tried to run them down, her Locust had pulled ahead, had kept pulling ahead, until the enemy gave up the chase to finish off her dying lancemates. She tried not to think about their screams on the radio. Another shell. This one close enough that the heat washed over her cockpit. Close enough that debris pattered against the Locust's thin armor like hail. The impact threw the mech sideways. Maya's hands flew across the controls, fighting the gyro, fighting inertia, fighting gravity itself. The Locust's right leg buckled slightly, actuator complaining, but held, still running, still flying. 10 kilometers to extraction. The terrain was changing. The flat hardpan giving way to rolling hills studded with scrub vegetation. Worse ground for sprinting, better ground for cover. She threaded between 2 hills, using them to break line of sight with whatever forward observer was calling in the fire. The Locust's foot placement became more critical. Each stride a calculated risk. Hit a rock wrong at 130 kE, and the mech would tumble, would cartwheel, would scatter itself and her across 100 meters of dirt. Speed is armor. Speed is armor. Her vision had narrowed to a tunnel, the edges graying out from the sustained G-forces of the mech's bounding gait. Blood pooled in her legs despite the compression suit. Her neck ached from holding her head steady against the constant jarring. The neuro helmet felt like it was trying to drill through her skull. The barrage intensified. They knew where she was going. Of course they knew. There was only one extraction point. Only one dropship. Only one way off this rock. Before the Combine forces overran the entire sector, she was racing against mathematics now, against the simple calculus of artillery trajectories and blast radii. An explosion ahead. Another to the right. A third behind her. close enough that the overpressure wave shoved the Locust forward, adding 5 kp to her sprint for a terrifying second. Maya rode the surge, let the mech lean into it, converted the enemy's fire into speed. Speed is armor. 8 kilometers. Her HUD painted threat indicators across the landscape, the computer trying its best to predict where the next shells would fall. It was guessing. She was guessing. The whole universe had reduced itself to guesses and prayers, and the screaming of overtaxed servos. A voice crackled in her headset, different from Overwatch. Red line, this is Anvil 6. We have eyes on your position. You're running clean. Keep your vector. Anvil 6. The dropship. They were watching her dash across their sensors, watching her race against death itself. Copy. Anvil 6. Maintaining speed. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, tight and high from the sustained stress. The Locust crested a rise, and suddenly she could see it. The extraction point. A cleared landing zone 3 kilometers distant, with the squat bulk of a Union-class dropship sitting in the center like a patient metal god. Its running lights were dark, but she could make out its silhouette against the growing dawn. Beautiful. Salvation. And between her and salvation, the artillery barrage intensified into hell itself. They knew. The Combine Fire Control knew she was making her final approach. 6 shells hit in a rough line across her path. Walking explosions designed to bracket her, to box her in, to force her into the killing zone. Maya's brain processed the pattern in microseconds. They were herding her, anticipating her dodge, predicting where the Locust would jink. So she didn't jink. She aimed straight for the gap between 2 explosions and pushed the throttle past the red line. 135 kf. The Locust wasn't rated for this speed. The actuators weren't designed for it. The gyro protested with a shriek that she felt in her bones. But for 5 seconds, she was faster than thought, faster than prediction, faster than death. The shells fell behind her, their timing disrupted by her refusal to follow the expected pattern. She burst through a cloud of smoke and debris, the Locust's sensors momentarily blinded, flying on instinct and dead reckoning. When she emerged, the dropship was 2 kilometers away, and the barrage had lost her. 5 kilometers behind her, a new sound joined the artillery. The distinctive thrumming of BattleMech footfalls. Her sensors screamed warnings. 2 contacts, medium class, closing fast. Probably Jenners. Probably the same Jenners that had killed her lance. Red line. We see them. You have pursuit. 2 mechs, bearing 270. Confirmed. What else was there to say? She couldn't fight. The Locust mounted a single medium laser and a pair of machine guns, weapons designed for shooting infantry and harassing vehicles. Against 40-ton Jenners with their jump jets and SRM launchers, she might as well throw rocks. But she could run. God help her, she could run. The Jenners were fast, capable of 90 kp on flat ground. But this wasn't flat ground, and they weren't running at their maximum because they were trying to line up shots. The Locust's speed was her only advantage. her only prayer. She kept the throttle buried, feeling the engine temperature climb into the red. Heat washed through the cockpit. Sweat ran down her face, stinging her eyes. A laser beam split the air to her right, superheated atmosphere crackling in its wake. The shot was close enough that she felt the thermal bloom through her canopy. They were finding their range. Another few seconds, and they'd start connecting. 1.5 kilometers to the dropship. Anvil 6. Red line inbound, hot with pursuit. Request immediate covering fire. Negative, red line. We can't risk the main guns this close to your position. You need to get inside our point defense envelope. Point defense. The dropship's anti-missile systems and light autocannons designed to swat incoming ordnance and aerospace fighters. Effective range maybe 800 meters. She was still 700 meters out. Another laser, this one closer. The beam scored the ground directly in front of her, throwing up a gout of molten soil. Maya jerked the Locust right, felt the gyro protest, felt the whole mech teeter on the edge of catastrophe. For a horrible second, she was falling, tumbling, dying. Then the left foot found purchase, and she was running again. Trajectory altered, but speed maintained. 600 meters. The Jenners were closing, their pilots good enough to maintain fire discipline while sprinting. She could see them now on her rear camera. Two angular shapes bounding after her like predators after wounded prey. Which was exactly what she was. Wounded prey. The Locust had taken hits during the recon mission. Armor breached in a dozen places. One solid alpha strike from either Jenner, and she was done. 500 meters. An SRM launch. She saw the smoke trails arc over her head, the missiles passing close enough that their exhaust washed over her canopy. They impacted ahead of her, trying to force her to slow, to dodge, to do anything except maintain her suicidal sprint toward the dropship. Speed is armor. Speed is armor. Speed is armor. 400 meters. The dropship's point defense opened up. Twin autocannons spat tracers over her head. A stream of fire that reached out toward her pursuers. The Jenners broke left and right, their pilots smart enough to recognize the threat. But they didn't break off. They couldn't. They knew what she was carrying. They knew what that data would cost their unit. 300 meters. Maya could see the dropship's boarding ramp now, open like a mouth, ready to swallow her. Techs and soldiers stood at the edges, watching her approach, watching the race between the fleeing scout and the pursuing hunters. Another laser. This one connected. The beam punched through the Locust's rear armor, already weakened from previous damage. Alarms shrieked. Her damaged display lit up like a Christmas tree. She felt the mech stumble as Myanmar bundles in the left leg severed, actuators screaming their death cry. The Locust's stride broke, speed bleeding off as the damaged leg struggled to keep pace. 120 kf. 110. No. No, 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 no. She overrode the safety limiters, dumping emergency coolant into the fusion engine, coaxing every last erg of power from the reactor. The Locust surged forward again. 120 kp, on a damaged leg that could fail at any second. 200 meters. The Jenners were lining up for another shot. She could feel it, that predator's patience as they prepared to end her run. The dropship's autocannons were firing constantly now, throwing up a wall of flak between her and her pursuers. But it wasn't enough. The Jenners were good pilots. They'd find a gap, 100 meters. She saw the missile launch, saw the smoke trails reaching for her like fingers of death. 6 missiles, short range. Tracking, she had maybe 2 seconds. At her speed, 2 seconds was 80 meters. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The dropship's point defense swiveled, tracking the incoming missiles. Autocannons roared. 3 missiles exploded in midair, torn apart by the defensive fire. 2 more went wide, their tracking disrupted. The 6th kept coming, locked on, unwavering. 50 meters. The missile hit the Locust's center torso, punching through the thin armor and detonating in the engine compartment. The fusion bottle held. Thank God. Thank every god. The fusion bottle held. But the explosion tore through Myanmar and structure. The mech lurched forward, no longer running, now falling with style. 25 meters. Maya had maybe 1 second to make a decision. Try to recover. Try to keep the Locust upright, and she'd lose too much speed. The Jenners would catch her. They'd tear her apart on the dropship's ramp. Or she could do something monumentally stupid. She shut down the gyro. The Locust, already stumbling, lost its last hope of balance. 30 tons of BattleMech pitched forward, feet leaving the ground, tumbling into a flat trajectory that was more controlled crash than run. Maya braced against her restraints, squeezed her eyes shut, and prayed. The Locust hit the ramp with a sound like the end of the world. Metal screamed. Armor shattered. The cockpit rang like a bell made of agony. Maya's head snapped forward against the neuro helmet. Vision exploding into stars. The mech skidded, tumbled, rolled, pieces flying off in all directions. When the world stopped spinning, she was inside the dropship's bay, lying on her side in a wrecked Locust that would never walk again. Alarms were screaming. Smoke filled the cockpit. Her head felt like someone had used it for a drum solo, but she was inside. She was alive. Close the ramp. Close the damn ramp, someone was shouting. Through her cracked canopy, Maya saw the boarding ramp begin to lift. Beyond it, the 2 Jenners were sprinting toward the dropship, knowing they'd lost, knowing they were too late, but unwilling to give up. The dropship's main guns spoke. Twin particle projection cannons, weapons that could crack the armor of an assault mech, fired at targets less than 100 meters away. The azure beams caught the lead Jenner square in the center torso. Armor vaporized. Structure melted. The fusion engine's magnetic containment failed, and the Jenner came apart in a miniature sun. The second Jenner pilot, blessed with an abundance of survival instinct, broke off and ran. The ramp sealed with a pneumatic hiss. The dropship's engines, already warming, began their launch cycle. Maya fumbled with her restraint harness, hands shaking so badly she could barely work the buckles. When she finally got free, she pulled the cargo pouch from her vest and just held it, staring at the sealed data drive inside. 50 grams, 3 mechs, 4 pilots, 1 suicidal sprint through hell. Someone was pounding on her canopy. She reached up with trembling fingers and popped the manual release. The hatch swung open, and suddenly there were hands reaching in, pulling her out, lowering her to the deck. Techs and medics surrounded her, voices washing over her like water. "Can you hear me? Lieutenant, can you hear me?" She could hear everything. The ringing in her ears, the rumble of the dropship's engines, the distant thunder of artillery still falling on an empty landing zone. "Package," she managed, a voice a croak. "Package secure." A tech took the cargo pouch from her shaking hands. "We got it, Lieutenant. We got it. You did good." The drop ship lurched, lifting off, leaving Sheraton III and its artillery barrages and its hunting Jenners behind. Through the bay's small viewports, Maya watched the ground fall away. Somewhere down there, the Combined forces were regrouping, repositioning, completely unaware that their artillery battery's coordinates were now in the hands of their enemies. By nightfall, that battery would be slag. The medics were trying to get her to lie down, to let them check her for injuries. She knew she should. She could feel blood trickling from her nose, taste it in her mouth. Probably a concussion. Definitely bruised ribs. Her left shoulder felt wrong, possibly dislocated. But for a moment, she just stood there, braced against a bulkhead, watching her Locust through the crowd of techs. The mech was a write-off, a twisted wreck that barely resembled its original form. One leg was bent at an impossible angle. The torso was breached in a dozen places. The cockpit canopy was more cracks than ferroglass, but it had run. God, it had run. "Speed is armor," she whispered. A hand touched her shoulder. Major Voss, somehow having made his way down from the command deck. His face was grim, but his eyes held something like respect. "Hell of a run, Lieutenant." She nodded, not trusting her voice. "The data's being processed now. If it's as good as the recon lance thought, we'll have firing solutions within the hour. That battery won't see sunset." He paused. "Your lance mates didn't die for nothing." Maya closed her eyes. Didn't they? 4 pilots, 3 mechs, all to deliver 50 grams of data. Was it worth it? Would it ever be worth it? But she knew the answer. In the calculus of war, in the brutal mathematics of the succession wars, it was worth it. Those firing solutions would save lives, would let her battalion advance, would push the Combine forces back, maybe just a few kilometers, maybe just for a few days. But that was how wars were won. Kilometers and days bought with blood and speed and desperate sprints through artillery barrages. The medics finally convinced her to sit down. They started their examination, checking her pupils, feeling for breaks and sprains. She let them work, her mind already drifting away from the pain and the fear, cataloging the run in her memory. What had worked, what had nearly killed her, what she'd do differently next time. Because there would be a next time. There was always a next time. That was the nature of being a scout pilot, of running a Locust. You were fast and fragile and terrifyingly expendable. You took the missions that required speed over firepower, desperation over sense. You ran when everyone else fought. You survived when everyone else died, or you didn't. Luck played its part. Today, luck had been on her side. "Lieutenant?" One of the medics was talking to her. "We need to get you to the med bay. That shoulder needs attention." She nodded. Let them help her to her feet. As they guided her toward the exit, she took one last look at her wrecked Locust. 20 tons of scrap metal now, fit only for salvage. It had been her third mech in 6 months. The previous 2 had also died on desperate runs, though she'd managed to eject from those. This time, there hadn't been time to eject. This time, it had been ride or die. She'd ridden. The med bay was clean and bright, a sharp contrast to the dim chaos of the mech bay. They laid her on a table and started cutting away her cooling vest. She stared at the ceiling, letting the adrenaline finally drain away, feeling the full weight of exhaustion settle over her like a blanket. "You're lucky," the doctor said, probing her shoulder with practiced hands. "Dislocated but clean. We'll have you back in a cockpit in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Then another mission. Another desperate sprint. Another roll of the dice against artillery and enemy mechs and simple mechanical failure." How many more runs did she have in her? How long could luck hold? She thought of her lancemates, their voices on the radio as the Jenners tore them apart. They'd been good pilots. Better than her, maybe. But not faster. Never faster. Speed is armor. It was a mantra, a prayer, a lie that kept you alive just long enough to make the next run. Because in a Locust, speed was all you had. No thick armor to shrug off hits. No overwhelming firepower to destroy threats. Just speed. And the desperate hope that being somewhere else when the shells arrived was enough. Today, it had been enough. The doctor was talking about rest and observation, about keeping her off duty for at least 48 hours. Maya nodded along, not really listening. In 48 hours, the battalion would have used her data to destroy the Combine artillery. They'd advance, pushing deeper into enemy territory, and they'd need scouts. They always needed scouts. Fast, fragile, expendable scouts. She closed her eyes, letting the exhaustion pull her down towards sleep. In her mind, she was still running, the Locust's feet barely touching the ground, the landscape blurring into streaks of color, shells falling like rain all around her. Running towards salvation or death, the margin between them measured in meters and milliseconds. Speed is armor. Tomorrow, she'd believe it again. Tomorrow, she'd climb into another Locust. They always found another Locust. And she'd run another mission. Because that's what scouts did. That's what she did. But tonight, just for tonight, she could rest. She'd earned it. The red line run was over. She'd survived. And that, in the end, was all that mattered.